here at Oran Park, and the field that includes most of the drivers preparing for this year's James Hardy. On pole position, Alan Moffat, alongside him the defending Hardy champion Dick Johnson, and on third position on the grid, a man who's really captured the imagination of motorsport drivers and fans around Australia, George Fury in the Datsun Turbo. And as well, we'll have the final 2 rounds of the National Panasonic Formula Pacific, and to top it off, some production series racing as well. The cars are out going round the long circuit here at Oran Park. The drivers are ready, the cars look ready, and we're ready to bring you the first round of the Australian Endurance Championship, 100 laps of Oran Park. And in the commentary box, John Smales with Will Hagan.
And a very tense race it's lining up to be too. 100 laps this year, 4 laps longer than last year, 262 kilometres, and crews have put in an enormous amount of preparation. That car there, Alan Moffat, has been here since Tuesday, has run greater than the race distance in practices, and his reward yesterday, when funnily, well not funnily because he'd done his homework beforehand, but in a small number of practice laps, he just ripped off a 1:16.1, and that was a quite remarkable time. It's an average speed of 124 kilometres an hour, and the nearest anybody was able to get to him was Dick Johnson in his brand new XE Falcon there, sitting behind him. He was 0.8 of a second away, and 0.8 is a pretty fair sort of a gap. He was also 1.4 seconds under Johnson's existing lap record of 1:17.4. So Moffat really has done his homework very, very well on car number 43. But Johnson too, who's been working for 4 months, he claims 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, he says literally without rest, has done a mighty job also, because everybody else who, with an XE Falcon has had trouble with it. It's been a taily motor car, much given to oversteer, and Johnson's is working pretty well, and he's done his best ever Falcon time here in his first outing in the car. But he was a very weary man when he arrived at the track very late on Wednesday. In fact, missed a press conference that had been organised for him. The third car there, a quite marvellous effort by the Nissan Datsun team mechanics who've brought that car to, not to perfection, there's still more to come, but they've done a wonderful job with it. Running at pretty high boost, 1.5 boost, and that's almost sprint race boost that they're using on the car. It gives 300 horsepower. And George Fury, the former Australian champion rally driver and a man of great talent, has done a great job in it. He lines up on the second row of the grid with Colin Bond, who's sharing the 9 Sports Camaro. There are the times from practice yesterday where Fury, in the second session, took a second off his previous best time, pipping Bond by a 10th and leaving him in 4th grid position. And then the Jones, Barry Jones, that is, Mazda, for the Seiko team, 1:17.6 was their best time before Alan Jones had an engine go crook on him during the race, during practices yesterday after only 1 flying lap, and he was pleased to have done a 17.9 in his only lap ever here in an RX-7, and but they had an overnight rebuild and they haven't really had time to bed it in, and beside him is the other part of the Seiko team. It's Bob Morris going to start the racing in the Falcon XE, which they've been developing for many months and which is making its racing debut here today.
In fact, the only major non-starter here today is the Peter Brock team, the Marlborough Holden dealer team. Brock's new Commodore SS is not homologated, in other words, not scheduled for racing until September 1. So Brock's first attempt against these people in his new Commodore will be in the Castrol 400 in September.
It's a 35-car field lined up on the grid, and behind the front runners of Moffat, Johnson, Fury, Bartlett, Jones and Morris is Terry Shield in another Mazda, Brian Callahan in a Falcon, John Duggan in a Mazda, and Peter McLeod in a Mazda. There are in fact 5 Mazdas in the first 10, a Bluebird Turbo, 3 Falcons and a Camaro. It's a hot field. It's a warm day at Amaru, a big crowd, a lot of enthusiasm, intense pressure on the competitors. All is in readiness, 10 seconds to go. Bond doing well from the outside of the second row and might grab second as they run to the kink. Johnson, though, might grab first on Moffat if he can fence him out, and he does. Johnson the lead, Bond second, Moffat third, Fury fourth. That was what Alan Moffat did not want, and it was what Johnson and Bond desperately wanted. And it's, in fact, Bob Morris is fourth beside him, and it's George Fury fifth. Morris was beside Moffat, slots in behind him. It's Brian Callahan, Peter McLeod, Barry Jones. Interesting that Moffat's not harrying the drivers in front. He's, one says, content, but sitting back there. That's Callahan, Peter McLeod, Barry Jones, and Dick Johnson's co-driver from Bathurst, John French, in his old car in that other blue Falcon that we saw, looming up there behind Barry Jones' red Mazda. In fact, no, Barry Jones further back than that. Barry Jones has got a very bad start indeed behind Johnson, Bond, Moffat, Morris. Peter McLeod, who came 10th in this race last year, running well. John French is in front of Barry Jones. Oh, Dick Johnson! All but lost it. And he'd have impaled it on that strut of the bridge there. My goodness, that was a big moment for the Queenslander, of the second race lap ever for this brand new XE Falcon. He was busy.
Moffat realising that he can get through the race without a pit stop. These two V8s will both need pit stops. But still, and Colin Bond there.
Up on two wheels.
Yes. Desperate stuff from these two big V8s in the lead as Bobby Morris, frustrated in fourth position behind Alan Moffat in the Mazda.
And just as much as there's some cut and thrust in the lead, look at this dice. Morris being pressuring Moffat, and with George Fury in behind him, and the great talent of Colin Bond in car number 9. Kevin Bartlett rolled a rally car twice last weekend, went over twice and damaged his wrist, and it's his right wrist in left-hand drive car. That's John French and Barry Jones. John English, you saw there in the yellow Falcon. Plenty of Falcons. The first Commodore on the grid was on 11th grid position. A sad day for Holden Commodores.
Johnson really making that car work, which is not going to do anything for the tyres on the vehicle. This is a long distance race.
The bloke might as well put his head in the noose, and I wouldn't mind forecasting that Colin Bond might just hit the lead in this race shortly. He's doing it very tidily. He's matching Johnson for pace everywhere, and he's loving it. Johnson's working his car fairly hard. Freddie Gibson made a most pertinent remark yesterday about running these big cars. He said he was not driving the Bluebird hard enough. He said...
Big Smoky from Callahan in the Falcon. So that's Brian Callahan in the Falcon, the first of the expirees.
He's in front of Peter McLeod.
And there's George Fury off as well. What a disappointment for the Datsun Bluebird team.
Well, that is sad. He hasn't had a biff, so he's had a major mechanical problem, and George will be very, very sad indeed. At Amaru, he'd worked his way up to second place in the CRC 300, and a most well-earned second place from being down in about 18th position. Just talking to his pit crew there through the two-way communication, probably to say to them, don't worry, boys. Oh no, he's keen to have a look.
Well, he's a rally driver. He knows what's going on beneath the engine of his motor car.
And he'd worked his way up to second, and then of course had that coming together with Alan Grice, which worried him. He didn't feel he was to blame, but was disappointed that it happened in an ethical sense. And the car was able to be repaired. It's not a new body on the car.
Eight laps down on the Colin Bond car with Dick Johnson just in front of him, starts to lap slower contenders, and this is where the first real dramas for the long-distance drivers come in, as they settle themselves down into their pace and now have to contend on the tight twisting Oran Park circuit with the slower drivers who can so much unsettle these big motor cars. Johnson has already opened 7 seconds on Alan Moffat in third position, with Bob Morris behind Moffat again, but the pace is certainly settling down, and these drivers trying to drive for consistency to keep their tyres and their fuel as economical as possible.
Lapping there the two leaders in the 1600cc class, incidentally, the little colt there of Rob Shute and Ian Burrell, just leading the Alexandra Surplus Toyota Corolla, the Meadow League car. And they, Surplus actually in the ex-Peter Williamson car, driven by Mark Quinn, was the fastest qualifier in the 1600 class.
Both of the big V8s dropping off the circuit there, and they've been doing that for some laps.
Bond making a little bit of ground on Johnson, as Johnson has to pioneer the way through the field, alert everybody to the fact that they are now being lapped. And that's going to cost him mostly more time than it will cost the people who are following him.
Lap time's about 1:18.5, about a second off the lap record, and that's quite a cracking pace for a long-distance race.
In winning this race last year, Johnson in 2 hours, nearly 10 minutes, 9 minutes, 56 seconds, averaged 1 minute 21 with one pit stop. And he won also the Touring Car Championship round here earlier in the year. So Johnson likes Oran Park, and his car's fairly well suited to it. Working the car hard though. Getting it sideways a fair deal. The comment of Fred Gibson earlier was that when you drive the big cars like the Falcons that Freddie Gibson drove so many years ago and won at Bathurst in, he said after about 20 or 30 laps, your water temperature's gone up, your oil pressure's gone down, the brakes are a bit, in Fred's words, how you're going, and the tyres are starting to go off. And he said he's been tending to drive the Bluebird Turbo in the same way, trying to conserve everything to keep it together for a fair while. This is the moment, the part of the race where the Falcons, the Camaros, the Commodores, although the Commodores are a fair way back, are running best. They will only go down from here, whereas the Mazda of Alan Moffat and Terry Shield and Peter McLeod and John Duggan and all the others, Barry Jones and so on, will tend to stay pretty fresh throughout the race distance.
And there's the dice for 5th and 6th place as the race enters its 13th lap. Peter McLeod in the lead in the Mazda RX-7, and behind him Barry Jones in the car in which Alan Jones assisted to win the CRC 300 at Amaru Park 2 weekends ago. These are both privately entered Mazdas, without the money necessarily backing them that Alan Moffat has in third position in his car, but very much similar in mechanical specification. McLeod was third in this race here last year. Barry Jones has had to do an overnight rebuild of his engine after Alan Jones yesterday, who got into the car very late in the afternoon, discovered serious engine malfunction and pulled in after only a very few laps. Barry Jones had a poor start in the race, and he's had to work his way through the field to get up to this point now where he's challenging McLeod. Perhaps the only Achilles heel which the Mazdas seem to have is the ability to overheat when they get involved in drafting, that is, tucking in close behind the car in front for quite some time. It's something which Barry Jones will be aware of, but this dice tends to go on throughout the race.
Transmissions can be fragile actually, and they carry a fair number of spares there, and careful on clutches in the way that they drive them. We've seen Terry Shield, in fact, who's been one of the front runners at Amaru this season, retire his car, number 37. One of the big differences between the Barry Jones car there and Alan Moffat is rear wheels. Moffat runs 16-inch rear wheels, whereas Jones is on 14-inch, and here's the big go, and he thought he'd made it. I think he thought so too. Had got a very different line through there, but not close.
This will be interesting at the end of the straight, this time down. Here he comes.
And that's it. 5th place Barry Jones, 6th place now Peter McLeod, who ran 3rd last year.
Now out in pursuit of Bob Morris, that you can just see disappearing at the bottom of our screen there. So the 2 Alan Jones cars now, the Bob Morris and the Barry Jones car, running in 4th and 5th position.
The race leader, Dick Johnson, is still there after 18 laps on his 19th, but quite unfazed by the early speed of Johnson and of Colin Bond in the Camaro was Alan Moffat in the Mazda number 43. Back there in 3rd place, at one stage being harried by Bob Morris in the Seiko Team Falcon. He's now started to come forward absolutely according to his race plan. Nothing would make that man depart from his race plan, and here you see him. And again, exactly as per schedule, and you'll find that Moffat's lap times will be absolutely consistent. And the man in front, Colin Bond in the Camaro, with a big, heavy motor car, 1,500 kilos of motor car, working the tyres very hard and the brakes, will be dropping his lap times somewhat. And that's why Moffat is now starting to challenge him. And he'll want to be past him as soon as he can, because that Camaro blocks an enormous amount of air. There's no car on the track will keep the air off the Mazda to a greater extent than the Camaro. And nearly down inside him there, as you could see, but positioned to have a run down the straight this time, and doesn't even, well, I was going to say didn't need to slipstream him. He wasn't worried about doing that. But on the other hand, too, he's not going to make it this time. He knows he can rely on Colin Bond. He won't pull any desperates on him. He won't cut his nose off. And if he can find a slot and get into it, well, then it'll be his corner and he'll move up a place. That's incredible. And Bond did run him there. My gee, he did. He said, if you're going to run round there, well, work it out yourself, but I'm taking my exit from the corner.
Not only incredible, but quite impossible.
It says something for the handling and the grip of the Mazda and the balance of it, that he could even contemplate doing it. And it was the sort of comment that Alan Jones made about the Mazda after Amaru. He said, when you watch a big touring car in front of you, wallowing and bucking and heaving everywhere, he said you look in the Mazda working out which side you'd like to go, and you can put it anywhere, and just when and how you'll make a break round him. Colin Bond and Alan Moffat, of course, were once teammates. Recorded that almost dead heat in the Hardy in 77. Brian Callahan behind him was running very well early on in the race, but has had some minor engine problem that's dropped him down a lap to this leading group.
Dick Johnson, meantime, continues to open his lead on Colin Bond. It was 7 seconds, 1 lap ago, and there's Barry Jones, who's had a big one into the fence.
And in getting past Peter McLeod, moving his way up to 5th place, he's had a lose at, let's say, Yamaha corner. It's the dog leg. Gee, well, he's got into trouble on the dog leg, and that really is a quick spot. And in some ways, lucky he didn't do more damage than that. He's gone right when he should have been hooking at the apex and going, there he is, and going left over the dog leg just when the car is absolutely at its lightest. And so Alan Jones, waiting in the pits for the latter part of the race, as we watch this dice continuing for 2nd and 3rd, will now be pleased that he's teamed up with Bob Morris today in the Falcon, which is running well. It's in a 4th position. And not sharing the car that won the CRC race so convincingly at Amaru.
Well, it certainly made Alan Jones's options today a lot easier to undertake. Again, the big Camaro down the chute. Moffat tucks in behind. It'll be a braking duel at the end of the straight, but look at the Camaro, the big legs of the V8 just start to move away ever so slightly, which removes Moffat's advantage at the braking area.
And look at Bond just with the brakes starting to go. Did you notice the lights just go on for about a second there as he picked them up, but no such requirement in the Mazda for Alan Moffat. Oh, this is a hard spot for Bond. If Bill O'Brien's Falcon holds him up, or the Capri 46 behind it, that's Barry Seaton, John Kraft's car, well then he'll be in real trouble. But he's found his way through, and Moffat, oh, sneaks with him. Had to sneak with him.
There's the passing manoeuvre. Alan Moffat goes for the inside run, and he gets it at the end of the main straight. And now Moffat out after race leader Dick Johnson, who is 8 seconds in the lead. Colin Bond momentarily balked by slower traffic, and it was just all over. Alan Moffat just went for the gap.
And already that argument's fairly persuasively finished as Moffat goes forward, certainly now, but again at his own scheduled race pace. Goes out looking for Dick Johnson. This debutante was very late for its debut. Bob Morris in car number 7, which only this week picked up sponsorship from Seiko for the 2 cars in the Alan Jones team, but isn't running badly at all. It's in 4th place at the moment. Interesting to watch Bobby Morris working the car and how much it's sliding around. I think the tyres are going to be a bit chatty well before the half race distance, which is roughly when they're planning to make a pit stop. But nothing wrong with 4th place at this stage in a pretty hot field. Only Peter Brock missing from the field among fancied and quick V8 car runners. The former Bathurst winner, now stud farm owner down in Kangaroo Valley. Very pleased to be back onto a racetrack. Usually works the car very hard through BP. Watch what happens when he slaps the power on here. Well, he had a big one the previous lap there. He got very crossed up and obviously didn't want that to happen again just by virtue of looking after the tyres, so kept it tidy.
.32 laps down and leading the 1601 to 2000 cc class is this car, number 63, Paul McDonald and John Murden, sharing a twin-cam Ford Escort, ahead by almost 3/4 of a lap, in fact, from the veteran saloon car driver Bob Holden, sharing with a former Alan Moffat mechanic Ray Cutchy, and in 3rd position in the class, the Tony Mulvihill Brian Nightingale car, also entered by Bob Holden, and it's about 10 seconds behind the boss. This is the leader, lifting wheels ever so slightly. The Daily Planet Toyota Celica, which is the ex-Peter Williamson car, is a retirement from this class, having blown up its engine in private practice this morning.
The best placed Commodore is, or was, the car number 2 of Terry Finnegan, but he's been having a race-long dice with the Roadways car of Steve Harrington and Garth Wigston, and they've gone back to the lead in that particular dice. Finnegan, as you can see, has just lapped well, both of them have just lapped the John Goss Jaguar XJ12. And these Commodores are now running 6th and 7th. The forward car of those two, believe it or not, was badly damaged yesterday in the front. And here they go again, and Finnegan has got all the cheek in the world, the former Brabham single-seater driver. Very experienced single-seater pilot. Two very nicely turned out cars and have been almost alone upholding the Commodore flag here this weekend. The lead car, the veteran driver Garth Wigston, who was talking of retiring after last year's Bathurst, but has come back for this race and to hone himself again for Bathurst, pairing with the young Steve Harrington, who's a driver of great smoothness and application, drives very sensibly, although it was he that damaged the car in practices yesterday. And what a great job's been done, not only of just getting it straight so that it steers properly and can be raced, but that the paintwork has been repaired too. And it's Finnegan, though, pulling away from the Harrington-Wigston car from Tasmania. So that's 6th, 7th, car 21, and John Goss and the Jaguar are a long way behind them. He was running 15th earlier in the race.
"39 seconds behind race leader Dick Johnson. Colin Bond has come to grief at the back of the circuit. He has a puncture front left-hand side, and he's trying to get the car back to the pits, and it's a long way round. 45 laps down in the race, almost half distance, almost time for his pit stop, but you can see there what's happening, and that wouldn't be doing the suspension of the car any good at all. Kevin Bartlett, who owns the car, has put a lot of lightweight suspension into this. It's very fragile, and this sort of driving is not going to do the suspension any good. Bond was only 3 seconds in front of Bob Morris, who was in 4th position when this puncture occurred.
Just about out of rubber there and onto the rim now. Toss the rubber away in just a moment. Destroy the rim.
That was Dick Johnson lapping him then. We saw the flash of blue going through.
That's close to $500 worth of damage if it hasn't hurt the suspension. Tremendous pull on the steering at that stage. Very bad luck for the team and for Colin Bond, who's driven such a good race to this point. And interesting to see now whether they put Kevin Bartlett in the car too, because Kevin wants to do a few laps today, despite a sore wrist.
That's Kevin all suited up, coming to the door of the car. Colin gets out. Yep, and Kev's going to have a go. And this is where he's the name by which he's popularly known, Big Rev Kev, will certainly come into contention. But the race is shot to pieces now, of course. Changing all 4 tyres on the car.
So that considerably changes the face of the race for such as Bob Morris, who had been getting close to the Camaro and into a position to threaten, and now comes forward a place so that the Johnson still leads from Moffat second. 3rd place Morris, who'll be absolutely delighted and I think a bit surprised that the car's running so well and brought itself up into such a healthy place.
Straight back on. There's no knowing until Kevin Bartlett goes out again just what damage may have been done to the geometry of the motor car.
left side of the front air dam slightly damaged and a bit loose at this stage. Lapped again by Morris, so they're now 2 laps down, which is a great shame.
Obviously fueled up quite a fair bit when it was being brought round to the pits by Colin Bond. Now giving it the rev to clear the flags.
At half race distance, the 2 to 3 litre class, which started off with 5 cars, was being led by this Capri, number 46. That's the Holcroft Autos entry of Barry Seaton, a regular 3 litre class runner and very successful in that class for many years at Bathurst and other circuits, and John Craft. 5 cars started the class in all, 3 Capris and 2 of the Nissan Bluebird turbos, but the big surprise was that both of those turbos have given trouble. Off the start line, Fred Gibson did a diff or a drive shaft in his car and went no further than virtually the opening lap of the race, and it wasn't very long after that that George Fury had troubles with a minor engine part, lost 8 laps, but is now out in the race and running healthily.
Lap 59, and Bob Morris has got his hand up. He's coming to the pits for the first of the scheduled stops for the Falcons. And now he could hand over to Alan Jones, former world champion in 1980. Morris in 3rd position, 22 seconds behind Alan Moffat. This has got to be a quick one. Pit stop starts. All the sophisticated jacking equipment moves in.
As Gary Wilmington goes through, who's also been well placed early on.
And Bob Benson is in the pits.
Well, the Bob Morris, Alan Jones Ford is in the pits, as you can see. You can see that they're changing the tyres. It doesn't look as though Alan Jones is going to take over the driving. Jones at the moment is cleaning the windscreen for Bob Morris. Morris is staying in the car, the hand is up. Has a quick word with Morris. The tank is full. Down comes the car, and Morris is back on the track. Just a moment and we'll see if we can get a word with Alan Jones. Well, Alan, how's it going? Bob didn't seem to have too many worries. He's going along quite peacefully there.
Well, he's having a little bit of gear selection problems, and it took him 3 or 4 laps to get used to it, and we decided to leave him in there because he's got used to that, and it would probably take me 3 or 4 laps to get used to it, if at all. So he's doing a good job, so leave him in there.
Are you happy with the times that you're running at the moment?
Yeah, very good. The Dunlops are holding up quite well indeed.
No, the times each lap.
Oh, the times?
Yep.
Yeah, well, we've got to be. We can't do any better.
What do you think of the performance of Dick Johnson's Ford out there at the moment?
Well, I think we just caused him a few extra seconds with his fuel stop, so I'll let you go and see him.
The race leader into the pits, Dick Johnson, who's done so well in this race, pulling out a lead of nearly 30 seconds, was at least 26 odd on Alan Moffat. Now into the pits for a scheduled stop, and Johnson, who won this race last year, this is lap 61, with 39 to go, is starting to look pretty good. Certainly much better than was thought on practice form or earlier in the week on the basis of the times that Alan Moffat was doing.
Bob Morris's pit stop took 55 seconds from stop to go. So far, Johnson's 42 seconds into his stop. And away at 45, so 10 seconds faster than Bobby Morris, but both of them, by long-distance standards, not quick. In fifth position, Peter McLeod pulls in, he's refueling, and there's the fire starting at the back of the car. Overflow from the fuel pipe has done it. That bucket that you saw beneath his motor car, he's stopped, he knows it's on fire now. Fire marshals have got to get there quickly. That bucket that you saw was an overflow. Now, fuel spilling from the car as well. Oh, come on, get the fire extinguisher. Good. Easy one, just residue fuel on the outside. The bucket that you saw underneath his motor car was from the overflow pipe for the fuel filler, and it was that which caught fire and spread to the motor car. But lucky for Peter McLeod. Question I guess to be asked for a while is, why did the Mazda pit at all? The Mazdas are not supposed to be pitting, which of course puts a lot of interest now on Alan Moffat in the lead.
It's very bad luck for Peter McLeod because he was running 6th very early in the race in the opening laps. And then when Fury dropped out, he was up to 5th straight away. Beautifully placed. But now, with just valuable seconds wasted there, and unsettles the driver for a lap or two. He's out again, and the race settling down now as most of the leading teams have done their solitary pit stop. Alan Moffat's the driver that's been pacing himself perhaps more so than anybody else. He's had something in reserve, and here he is, a 1:16.1, a quite startling lap time in practices yesterday, an average of 124 kilometres an hour. Hopeful of getting through the race without a pit stop, but Johnson's put enormous pressure on him, much more than I think than Moffat expected. And the feeling is that he'll probably have to stop because of the added pace and pressure that he's had from Dick Johnson. Johnson running out and in fact coming slowly through BP Bend there.
And going to the pits.
Riding pretty smartly, but in fact pulling into the pits. See what the Stuyvesant team can do.
Back wheels only, back tyres only. Moffat's big stock of Goodyear tyres.
Been so busy at the circuit this week, not only to get the car right for this meet, but to order his tyres from Bathurst. The Mazda's run an unusual size, and he has to have the tyres ordered and air freighted to have them in time for Bathurst in early October. There's a good stop.
Down on the other side, 30 seconds coming up. 31.5 seconds for Alan Moffat. Now that's getting more like professionalism. But why did Moffat have his stop at all is the question. Just forced so hard by Dick Johnson.
He arrived at the circuit with 34 sets of wheels and tyres, and each wheel was worth $400. So that gives you some idea of the cost of motor racing at the level at which Alan Moffat demands that he run it, forces himself to run it. Here's Johnson just in front of Moffat. John English behind in the light blue Falcon. John English, Ivan Tighe. Here's Johnson. Now ready to run the remainder of the race. Did it solo last year and didn't change tyres in the pit stop. And 32 laps to go, 68 completed, and this is the situation where Johnson, both of these cars having pitted, Johnson now has Alan Moffat right on him, and they are arguing over the race lead. Have a look at it. Moffat sitting in hard and tight behind Johnson, as he was forced to do at Symonds Plains too, and where he cooked his engine. It's a pretty warm day at Oran Park, although there's a bit of a prevailing breeze. John, you have to give credit to both of these drivers, to Moffat for the sheer dedication and persistence that he always shows in his motor racing, and that he's again displayed this week, and the dedication in the workshop, months of building, which is what Johnson enjoys as much as driving and racing, and the way that he got his sums pretty right.
Well, he wants his way through that S's, doesn't he?
Came out here with a car that was pretty much ready to go, and was certainly good enough to record the best ever time that he's done here in a touring car. He did a 117.1 practicing for this race last year in the old XD Falcon, and a 117.4 practicing this year for the Touring Car Championship, which he also won, and yesterday a 16.9.
Lap car getting in Moffat's way, he won't like that. Just look at the speed of that Mazda through the VP bend. Caught most of that time back up.
Problem for a lesser powered car, a 270 horsepower Mazda that Moffat's driving, to try and get past a 396 horsepower Falcon, which is what Dick Johnson's got. He's got the grunt out of the corners, he's got the speed down the straight, he doesn't have the brakes, and he's harder on his tyres.
Whoops.
And look, Moffat slowing, dropped right off that dice, letting Johnson go away, and quite obviously with serious troubles in Mazda number 43, when dicing for the lead, holding a strong second place, pulling up towards Yamaha corner. And there a very sad hand goes out the right-hand side of the window. Alan Moffat, who very rarely has had any problems with the Mazda. Hardly any speed at all, as you can see. So it's driving, because that's an uphill section of circuit, and finally he's declutched and rolled it back. What can be the problem? Good chance to have a look at the very low profile tyres, particularly there on the rear, but big diameter. And this man reveling in that release of pressure. There's a funny little side bet going on in this race between a young boy who's taken out a 10-cent bet with Alan Jones that Dick was going to win the race, and Dick said, well, I'll do my best, mate, and he said, if I don't win the race, I'll give you the 10 cents to pay Alan Jones.
There's the Mazda.
Well, Alan Moffat has turned off the engine has been turned off. We're not quite sure what the problem is as yet. There seems to be some sort of problem with the internal systems as well as the engine for Moffat. We're not quite sure what's happened, and no one's given us any indication yet. 3 inches of the throttle cable apparently has broken off the Mazda. The throttle cable has broken, and they've lost lost 3 inches of the cable, so obviously Moffat was in diabolical states. He couldn't get any power at all into the motor. And they're cutting the cable at the moment, taking the cable off, and obviously it's going to be a long time before Alan Moffat gets back out in the Peter Stuyvesant Mazda, Will.
Well, bad luck for Alan Moffat. By gee, you can do your homework, can't you? And you can try and get everything right, and then the throttle cable. And this, with 10 laps to go, 90 completed, is the race leader, Richard Johnson from Queensland, into the pits in car number 17. And this is real drama.
He is 37 seconds ahead of Bob Morris on the same lap. The only 2 drivers on the same lap, with 9 laps remaining now. And Dick Johnson seems in no hurry to get to his pit.
Is it just that he wants new tyres? Richards in the BMW 635 is in 3rd place. John English in a Falcon is 4th. Peter McLeod in Mazda that we saw with a minor fire at the back of it is 5th. And Terry Finnegan in a Commodore is 6th.
Morris has gone past down the main straight, so he now takes over the lead, at least according to the lap charts that we're being given.
Nothing scheduled about that, with 2 pit stops as Peter McLeod goes by 2.
Johnson 43 seconds on that stop.
And then Alexandra Surplus in the Meadow-Lee Toyota Corolla Levin. A very quick little car, actually. Little twin cam thing, and it handles nicely. It's got a lot of grunt.
Holds the lap record here, in fact, for the under 1600cc class of 1 minute 22.7, which isn't, of course, far off the pace of the race leader.
And pretty handy, as you can see, through tight sections. Now 8 laps to go. 92 have been completed.
And there's a big one across the dog leg as car
Terry Finnegan, at least.
Gary Wilmington. And Dick Johnson will see that in a moment. There he goes, straight past it.
There it is in the background. As Wilmington had an enormous lose over there. The same spot as Barry Jones went, but managed to keep it off the fence. And it's a long time since anybody's had trouble there. Murray Carter, probably 2 or 3 years ago, went off wide on the exit down towards BP, and for one of the few times in his career in the last 30 years, did a lot of damage to an old Falcon. Peter McLeod lights on. John English. John English is lying 4th. McLeod is 5th behind him, and then it's Johnson. Richards in the BMW is in 3rd by virtue of not having made a pit stop. Peter McLeod has now gone through on English, as you can see. And Peter McLeod, by overtaking English, being on the same lap, has now gone up to 4th place, putting English back to 5th. They were struggling over 4th place.
30 seconds exactly the lead that Bob Morris holds over Dick Johnson now. And Morris would be delighted with the debut of this Alan Jones shared Ford Falcon.
Well, he'll be thrilled by it. He really will. So will George Shepherd, who built the car. Dick Johnson's attitude was that George hadn't done his homework and wasn't an originator, and the suggestion that he was making was that he got his cars to work well by looking at what other people were doing, and I suppose anybody in any industry certainly sees what goes on around him. But yesterday morning, Alan Jones's comment on that car was that, well, they were not very complimentary. He said it brakes well, it's got plenty of speed, and that was about the nicest 2 things he could think to say about it. But Bob Morris, great credit, has persevered with that car. He's been doing all the testing. He's done all the qualifying this weekend pretty well. done all the driving today, and he's in first place.
The news that we get from the official lap scorers is that Dick Johnson is in second place, but only just, because right behind him is Peter McLeod in car 40.
In the same position that he was in a year ago.
And that indeed means that between second and third position, according to the official lap scorers, are Dick Johnson and Peter McLeod.
An unscheduled stop was bad luck for Johnson. You can see the 3 litre class leader, 46, the Capri of Kraft, in behind McLeod, who's just a couple of laps ago taken John English and gone back, we think, to third place.
6 laps remaining, and Bob Morris, the leader of the race, goes down into BP band. There he is.
Bob Morris and George Shepherd be pleased, but so too will the newly signed sponsors for the car.
Dick Johnson is flying. He's brought the gap down to 27 seconds, but with only 5 laps remaining, it's a fairly futile effort. There's Morris. And Alan Jones, after a year in the touring car wilderness, having tried all 4 makes of touring cars, has now in 3 weekends found his name, if not himself, in 2 race wins. Of course, Alan Jones hasn't driven this car today. The victory has to go, the credit for the victory has to go entirely to Bob Morris. But Alan Jones, having scored a win in the CRC 300 at Amaru Park 2 weekends ago with Barry Jones in the Mazda, which crashed here earlier today, certainly seems to have struck pay dirt in his choice of touring cars, leading up to the Castrol 400 at Sandown next month and the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst in October.
It's a 100-lap, 262-kilometre race.
Four laps to go.
It's a skaty car. Gets sideways out of that slow corner there. Might expect some wheel spin, but the thing got very sideways. And Bob's trying to look after it. Conservative out of BP corner and just winding the power on as he gets onto the straight, running it up to maximum speed, about 230 kilometres an hour. Tight left-handed bitupave. Up here to the stop corner after diving under the bridge, Coca-Cola.
Johnson, 24 seconds, the gap, 3 laps remaining. Dick doesn't give up.
Over the bridge after the slowest corner on the circuit, Ampol. The S's. Dunlop corner. Yamaha.
closing stages of the race. John Goss and his Jaguar are still running all the way back in the field. It must make Gossy quite happy that he's persuaded the big cat to cover almost 100 laps at racing speed round Oran Park, and must bode well for his chances in the remaining races.
The race situation at this stage, with Morris now having completed 98, leading, and with 2 to go from this man in second place, Dick Johnson. They're on the same lap, but that gap of 25 seconds tantalising Dick Johnson. It'll be interesting to find out just why he had to make that second pit stop. Third place being held by the Peter McLeod Strongbow Cider Mazda RX-7, a survivor in a glamour field. I suppose the Barry Jones car was the one grabbing attention after its win with Alan Jones in the CRC. But of course, Alan Moffat too in the Stuyvesant car, one that everybody thought would do well, but hampered by that throttle cable break. They're in front of Jim Richards in the BMW 635, the only car that hasn't pitted and therefore has been helped forward to lie fourth. As Richards said, I can't go any faster than a 1:18.7, at least not on race tyres. I could have got into 17s with qualifying tyres, but it wouldn't have done me any good. But he's worked his way up to fourth, and the best placed Commodore is Terry Finnegan, car number 2, lying fifth.
McLeod and the Mazda using an engine built, in fact, by Barry Jones, who's become something of an expert at putting these race Mazdas together. So some slight consolation, at least, to Barry Jones, whose effort all ended in the fence.
The other hard luck stories, of course, concern car 9, the Chev Camaro of Kevin Bartlett and Colin Bond, with a flat tyre when lying third behind Johnson and Moffat, and therefore in front of the present race leader, Bob Morris, and everybody who tailed him. Lost a lot of time circulating slowly and then with a pit stop.
3/4 of a lap to go for Bob Morris.
Comfortably at this stage in a car that I think will have made him very weary, but that weariness will subside fairly quickly, I think, with the elation of his first run for a long while. In fact, I think I'm right. I think it's his first run since Bathurst last year, since colliding with Chris Gibson and bringing the entire James Hardy 1000 to a halt, making it a 750-kilometre race last year. But this is a nice comeback in a car that's given them a lot of trouble and has missed 2 race meetings because they haven't been happy with it. But down to the checkered flag comes Bob Morris. Victory, and doesn't want to do one more lap. He's completed 100, slowing for his pit crew, and they will be delighted. And he's certainly worked very hard for it. As some of the smaller cars come through, that was Dick Johnson coming home second.
Only 16 seconds behind, giving an indication of just how much Bob Morris slowed down on the last laps.
This is third place, Peter McLeod. He did the same thing last year, and that's probably annoying him. But he's, as you can see, it's not annoying him too much at this stage. Going past a very slow BMW 635, which was having trouble there, I think. There's Alan Moffat. Another of the hard luck stories of the race. Jim Richards finished fourth, Terry Finnegan fifth, and Alan Moffat, well, what might have been. The throttle cable did the job as well as a major problem. Put him out when he looked to, he was running in front of the race winner Morris. And that's the story. So, Ford Falcons, which weren't attracting a lot of fancied money only a few weeks ago, come home first and second, and Mazda, which had all the popular backing, did no better than third, and Holden Commodores, which have been a bit absent in recent times, the best they did was fifth, finishing not on the same lap as the leaders, and 11th qualifying. But things will be very different at the Castrol 400 at Sandown when Peter Brock debuts a lighter and 60 horsepower more powerful Commodore than any of the cars running here today and than he's run previously. We'll be talking very shortly with Bob Morris, and I think, as I said, it'll be a tired but on the other hand very elated Bob Morris. John Keefe's just told me that the Commodores will be more powerful but not lighter. But they'll be very grateful for the 60 horsepower they'll be picking up, or thereabouts.
Alan Jones congratulates Bob Morris. That's Jones there on the disguised in a Seco shirt along with the rest of the crew, but standing back a little bit from Bobby Morris. It's Bob's day today, it really is.
When they made their pit stop, I think I saw one of the most highly paid windscreen cleaners in the world.
You bet.
The George Fury Bluebird Turbo going by, and that's again an interesting hard luck story. Third fastest qualifier. What a demon time of 17.3. And as you can see, we've got Bob Vincent in there now, and he'll pick up with Bob Morris when he's ready.
Well, a very, very elated Seiko team are on the grid at the moment with the winning car, 7 Bob Morris, along with teammate Alan Jones. And we'll talk to Alan in just a moment, but first of all, congratulations, Bob. It was a great drive.
Thank you very much. We're pleased to be able to win first up in the Channel 7 Seiko car, and it's great for our sponsors, great for the team. And I think it was all that rally practice I had last weekend. It was certainly slippery out there.
But it would have been fair to say, I think, that nobody expected you to win.
Well, we came here to run a calculated race because we felt that we weren't quite on the pace to lead from the front, and that's what we did, and the dividends paid off. Next time we'll win from the front.
Well, congratulations, Bob, and I think I'll just have a word with your co-driver for Bathurst. Alan, it will be the Ford for Bathurst.
Well, I think it's not fair to say co-driver because Bob did all the work himself, and all I did was clean the windscreen. But as George Shepherd said, wait until we get it right.
Well, I heard you say when you got when Bob pulled up at the grid after the winning last lap, you said I wanted to drive the last lap.
Yeah, I asked him to pull in. I wanted to do the last lap, seeing he'd done all the work.
Well, congratulations, and that must really make you feel happy after some of the problems you've had this year.
Oh, it does indeed. It's terrific. You know, it's 2 races for the Seiko Kmart Channel 7 Network racing team, and 2 wins. So, you know, so far so good.
Well, congratulations and all the best at Sandown.
Thank you very much.